Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I don't know about you, but I only came to Budapest with the intention of stealing some geese, and now I'm here debating. I really don't know what happened in the meantime. Here we are. Basically, I'm here to sum up the government side by pointing out to what the opposition side were kind of right about, except not in a right way. So what my partner Marcus has told you was the difference between socialism and capitalism, and the difference between socialism and welfare capitalism. Why or how, where we can see these remnants of capitalism and the examples in the year 2013, namely in the free work that is done in the greatest, well, concept of entity that we have today, namely the internet, through projects like Mikic or SETI or the 3D pen, and finally how incentives work. I'm going to focus on the incentives, but firstly to talk a little bit about what Nesh said. Basically, there are two main fallacies in all of the opposition. Otherwise, they're cool, they're great, I love them, but there are just two things they're not entirely right about, and these two things they're not right about are the reason why their side does not stand. So, the first is the notion of equality that Nesh has introduced as their extension. Equality, how can you have equality under socialism, because we're supposed to be equal in capitalism? Well, it's actually the other way around. How do we view equality? What is equality? In capitalism, we are supposedly equal in rights, whereas we differ in wealth. In socialism, however, once this factor of wealth is minimized, when it's removed from the equation, is the moment when we get the chance to truly be equal, in the sense of being able to truly express what we are without being too busy surviving to even prove it. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, Milan.
To brush down the one point that you guys have, can you please explain us how come we didn't have the experiment or the collaboration as Wikipedia in socialism?
Internet? But to continue, the second question was the question of identity. Who are you? Are you indeed in socialism just a number who exists for the state, who does not exist outside of it? You are not valued enough because you work just like everyone else, etc., etc. Well, here's our answer to the question, who are you? In capitalism, who you are too busy trying to survive, to have the time to think who you are outside of your workplace and outside of trying to earn another euro, dollar, or forint. In capitalism, once that problem is out of the way, not in capitalism, in socialism, once you get that problem out of the way is when you have the chance to express yourself. And that is what we were telling you. This equality can only be achieved in a socialist system, when wealth is no longer the factor, when all these individual differences can come to full fruition thanks to this no longer being the case. Yes, Lila?
Yeah, so if now socialism is this idea that everyone has similar types of wealth, and wealth is equally distributed, how is it that a single-party system with a government with no opposition is better at understanding how the market works and how to generate that wealth than individuals?
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we come to the second fallacy, the fallacy of equivocation. Identifying socialism with dictatorship and identifying capitalism with democracy. And that has already been refuted in the very second speech. It's not the way it works. There is no link. Sometimes it coincides, but there is no mechanism to prove that link as such. And finally, to refer to Nesh's example of this experiment of the differences in the fruits that were grown in the field at the end of the first year in the 19th century, well, the second problem with the opposition is that they ignore the incidental. when Lila said that in socialism you are born into a certain factory, our question is, well, in capitalism you are born into a family. You are born into a certain income bracket. How do you get out of that? And that is these incidental points. By ignoring them, by saying your success depends on yourself, is a mistake. We are saying we are removing that incidental point, that accident away from you. Now, when you've got the basics covered, show us who you are. And through the internet, through all these projects, is how you prove who you are, respected for working the best you got for society. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Speaker, for those remarks. Now I call upon the opposition whip to conclude the debate for the other side of the bench and for all of us.
Thank you so much for the floor, Mr. Speaker. I was born in the Socialist Soviet Republic of Moldova. I'm really, really happy I turned away from that. And why is exactly the answer of what this debate was supposed to be about. And we might have had two issues on that side, as was mentioned previously, but the government in this debate had one big problem. They didn't talk about what the debate was supposed to be. So, in essence, they made us all believe that this debate should be about opposing socialism to capitalism or to welfare capitalism or whatever else. Whereas this debate is about talking about socialism and identifying its strengths or its disadvantages. So opposing it to capitalism and creating this false dilemma for all of us here was the biggest problem of the government in this round. So first of all, let's see what was this debate about and why should have it made us focus on socialism and on the core ideas of socialism that we never really heard from the side of the government. So let's just quickly remember what we heard from the government. Well, the only examples that you found match socialism with dictatorship. Let's not talk about that. Then some other examples are, the real socialism, which is a utopia. Let's not talk about that. What is it exactly that the government wanted to talk about in this round? There was no clear example of functional socialism that could be here on the table for us to discuss its pros and cons. Yes, sir?
Well, the Republican says that Obama is a socialist, so here's your example.
That is exactly my point, sir. When I mentioned that I am glad I turned away from my country that used to be called socialism, that was exactly the point I was trying to make. Naming somebody as socialist or qualifying somebody or a country or a regime as socialist does not automatically make it socialist, just as Obama is not a socialist. So we go back to the question, what is socialism about? What is the principle of equality about? And so on and so forth. These are big, big questions that you avoided to answer and to just put them on the table throughout this whole round. No, Philip, sit down. So let's just see what happened next. We brought the bigger question finally in this debate about equality and about how socialism is planning out there in its big books, because this is what we have to look at, to implement equality and fairness in society. No, gentlemen. So, again, we didn't hear from the government any sense of practicality from the big books of socialism on how to build exactly this equality. We have been proving you that in socialism, or at least according to the books and the theory and the philosophy behind it, which is what this debate is about, you are born in a predefined society. You will never have the liberty or the freedom to question your role. This is what socialism is about. And we've been telling you that we don't believe this is free equality. Where even if we touch upon the sensitive thing of slavery and which types of systems you are bigger of a slave, well, in socialism, you cannot even choose what kind of slave you are. Whereas in capitalism, at least you can be a slave of debate, a slave of a capitalist, a corporate bastard, and so on and so forth. Sit down, sir. So then, what our side was trying to prove is that a major problem with socialism is this, ultimate sense of authority. the existence and the proclaimants, the universal proclaimants of the ultimate truth that the state knows for you. So we think that this is exactly the socialist principle that defies both the definition and the possibility of equality as such, as well as a sense of justice. To respond to Philip's question, who was wondering, what can you do when you know you're being done an injustice as a free internship? Well, in socialism, you couldn't do anything about it because nobody would even listen to you, because you're just trying to question the system, which is wrong. At least in some other systems, you could potentially do that, and that's already better. But then again, we brought a very, very cool argument about the fact that socialism as such defies again the idea of equality and this social harmony, because it does not encourage, and it actually goes against the sense of identity. And this is what Nash was trying to convince you about. There's no ethnical groups, there's no religious groups, there's no kind of individual orientation towards something in socialism. And we believe this is fundamentally wrong. And for all those reasons, we really beg you to oppose.